We use raw materials in everyday life. Our phones, houses, trains, energy systems. But we live in a society that praises more, having more stuff, travelling more economic growth. This is driving the consumption of raw materials up, and it's coming at a cost to people and the planet. Mining destroys nature, displaces communities, and uses up limited global natural resources. This is why we need to elect governments that take action, that look at how we can all live a good life within the limits of the planet, that make plans to reduce the consumption of raw materials, and that hold industry accountable for harms they cause to workers, communities and nature.
Why do we urgently need a raw materials transition in Germany? We need a raw materials transition globally. We needed to deal with the climate catastrophe. There's not a single climate scenario that decarbonises energy and land use fast enough to keep us under 1.5 or 2 degrees centigrade without significantly reducing the energy and land use of rich nations like the UK and Germany. It's not just about the climate. The use of extractive resources, minerals, particularly in northern countries like Germany, is increasing exponentially. New resource areas need to be opened up, causing problems in the global south and Europe. But more importantly, according to a 2020 scientific study published in Nature, focusing on current consumption rates, the authors noticed we have a low probability, less than 10% at the most optimistic, to survive without facing a catastrophic collapse. We can do something about this. Just as we're undergoing a massive shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy, we're also ensuring we're moving to a circular economy. We have to ensure that it's not just an ever-growing circular economy. Planetary boundaries mean we need to create a circular society based on the amount of raw materials we use and how we use them. Europe's a leader in this area. Recently, the European Parliament has demanded the first ever EU targets to reduce overconsumption. MEPs have voted to push for legally binding targets to reduce resource use by 2030 and bring EU consumption within planetary boundaries by 2050, and they're also questioning the green growth messages within the EU Green Deal. Within Europe, Germany is particularly important because of its role as the industrial powerhouse of Europe. But the German people have also impressively led the way within environmental and climate movements, and because of this, I'm optimistic the German people can lead on this area too.
The need for the nations of the global north to change their consumption habits and specifically their raw materials becomes evident in the light of the latest report by the international NGO Global Witness that shows the murder of socio-environmental leaders. Here in Colombia, 64 leaders were killed. That was the worst figure since the report was made, for raising their voices and defend water and its territories against the obvious violations of human rights to vulnerable populations and effects on the environment and public health caused by the incursion of megamining enterprises in territories of high ethnobiodiversity. Of the 212 deaths registered in 2019 by the Global Witness report, 50 refer to the extractive industry. So applying rigorous due diligence in the extraction of raw materials will help us to stop territorial bleeding.
A raw materials transition is needed in Germany because Germany's raw material excessive consumption has deep bad impacts in other parts of the world, and very especially in the global south. To get raw materials means the need of mining, and mining has a lot of bad consequences in terms of human rights violations and environmental destruction, like deforestation, land destruction, water contamination, air pollution. What we working with affected communities are denouncing is not related to how to tackle a needed transition and how to get the raw materials and where to get them, but about understanding how urgent the situation is for many communities resisting mining projects around the world. So standing in solidarity is very important, and this includes our consumption behaviors and reducing our material footprint. And must also include deep discussions about how it is being talked about sustainability, about green deals, and about carbon zero societies. So most of the time, these happen to be greenwashing false solutions and not at all real answers to the problem caused by mining and raw materials hunger. To hear the voices of the affected communities and peoples and their own demands can help understand the urgency and serve as a catalyst to act.
En tierras blancas de sed. En tierras blancas de sed, partidas de abrazamiento, los cristos llamados cactus vigilan desde lo eterno. Aldeas que han hambre y sed, igual verano que invierno, miran así de hito en hito, con sus puros ojos inmensos y el cuerpo en vano crucificado, al pasajero, al pasajero. Este es un extracto de un poema de Gabriela Mistral escrito en 1912, Premio Nobel de Literatura, sobre el desierto de Atacama, un desierto de donde se saca el litio y el cobre, que da energía y tecnología para un mundo desechable. Alemania necesita urgentemente un Rohstoffwende. Alemania sigue replicando las mismas dinámicas coloniales de los últimos 500 años. Una vida más verde y sustentable en Europa, con autos eléctricos y aguacates orgánicos, está siendo pagada por los territorios del sur global. Las soluciones están claras. Se necesitan gobernanzas locales, autonomía de los pueblos, de crecimiento minero y energético, desprivatización de los bienes naturales. Fin a las normativas actuales de Europa para que así la poesía de los territorios oprimidos pueda seguir surgiendo.
A lot of the companies were exploring and trying to mine oceans in the Pacific and in the area, European companies. And we know that a lot of them are actually stating that this is for the blue climate change that we're trying to envisage for our future, where we actually have minerals fueling or taking over the fossil fuel. While that might be okay for them to say, we are not very comfortable and we're not very supportive of this line of argument, because for us in the region, we contribute very little to the climate change, the ozone gas. So that's why we're feeling that we seems to be penalized, and we are being used as the mining sites, as the guinea pigs for this extractive industry. But we are contributing very little, even though we are the most vulnerable to this climate change impact. So we're hoping that people in Europe and in the most developed countries could consider us, be in our shoes. If something happened to our ocean, it might be in the deep, but it connects to lands where we lived in the Pacific. So our outcry is, please stop deep sea mining. Give them 10 years of science. Let's consider what the finding will be after 10 years from now, and then decide if it's the answer. But there are a whole lot of alternatives for this green climate change strategy. They are thinking that the minerals from the deep will replace. We have always believed that recycling, repositioning, positioning, and repackaging the current minerals that are already in use might be answers to what they're actually trying to say.